Alright, so I'm mostly done with the majority of the cuts for the short side radius, at least on this one head. So I figured I'd just make a video on how that looks. You can see how much metal is in there. It's a decent amount of material. I don't know how well it'd be better like doing a side by side. But you can see the difference now in the height. And again, these are upside down, so that's the floor that you're looking is on top. But you can probably kind of see the difference. Looking there. But basically these are mostly open to the GT40 spec. I was trying to keep them around a 1330, and then they kind of opened up toward like 340 thousandths, which again is kind of a safe zone. But you can see there is a little resistance in some spots, so like I said, the majority of them is opened. It is a little tricky from the port side, from the side that we're on now. So there are a couple of spots that I'll probably just quickly massage or even come in from the bowl. Or even using like an 1/8 inch instead of the 1/4 inch to be able to do that. I should have knocked that material out. I think it would be easier to see the height difference. But basically, being, again, like I'll probably remeasure the stock ones just so I can see the actual difference, but it's around 100,000 inches or more. 100 thousandths, excuse me, not 100,000 inches, which is almost an 1/8 of an inch. But actually 340 thousandths to 225 it basically is, which is about that thick. So this is an 1/8 inch washer, just to give you an idea of how much air you're taking out. And across the width of 1 inch, that's pretty decent. That's like having, I don't know, like a giant malt straw or whatever. Like when they used to make those plastic straws, I could probably get the actual radius on that, but I just figured I would show it. But I also wanted to mention that until you have a feel for this size burr and the amount of torque that can cause this to dance around, I would say the best idea is to kind of start with the corners and really press firm, at least when it's in its beginning stages and you're not getting closer to your final value. And also to start the burr farther up toward the bowl. Like, see how that's starting. So instead of jumping back and forth here, an egg may not be the best for this. Like, maybe even a flat cylinder would have been better to hold like horizontally to make sure it's even, but that's just kind of a fair warning. Also, cutting this down to a 4 inch instead of a 6 inch, it's almost like looking down, or probably even more difficult. But when you have like a blast shield on or something, trying to see exactly where that is can be tricky. So you're kind of like peering in and only have kind of a little porthole to be able to see where it is. So I think though, when you start further in and get a feel for it, you're basically just mostly going by feel. Like, your eyes can still see it, but you know, go back and forth a few times. And again, you need heavy pressure on that. An 1/8 inch would be better if you wanted to be real careful, but again, I don't even think Like you can reach a little bit from the bowl with that, but it's kind of iffy with I'm just trying to zoom in on that. But you can see how it's a little, I need to smooth that out a little, which wouldn't really be a big deal. It doesn't have to be totally perfect, and you're definitely not going to get all of these cloned perfectly. You know, you're not a CNC, but it doesn't really have to be. So as long as you're within that ballpark of that, like whether you're going to like, you know, 1325 or 1340, it's perfectly fine. You're going to have one that's an oddball. But if you hit that number, like, or even go over 40, just be sure that you're being conservative on the other ones then. And then again, you can come in from the bowl, which I was hoping. Let me set this down. I want to turn these heads around for a second. And of course there's all that material. I'm just going to let that dump out. One second. Try not to crush anything while I move these. All right. You can see how it adds up, right? It's a decent amount of iron, and all of that is just from these short sides, like major carving. I'm using like this touch to focus feature, so I have to touch what's on the screen to focus in, but I mean that right there is perfectly fine. Again, like you could smooth that a little bit, but as far as dimensions, that's basically as far as you need to go. See how that's got a nice curvature to it as well, so everything is kind of rounded out. I have seen people get nuts in that particular corner, like I said, you do want to use the 1/4 inch right in that corner a little bit and round that out. But now in that spot, if you hit water, maybe you could weld that particular spot. But as far as the short side, I don't think it's possible. I want to see, let me see, I might as well see if I can now flip these around so we can compare the stock short side. Oh my god, that's heavy. Alright, nice. Now we have a good side by side, so you'll be able to see. Alright, so ported short side. The exhausts are untouched except for that scavenge plateau, but ported short side, stock short side, ported, unported. I'm sure you can see the difference, especially if I put the light behind, which now of course I can't really do on this one. But you can definitely see the difference in height. But notice how the shape hasn't really changed. So that's all I did, you know, follow what's from the factory, rounding it out, and just giving that floor more room for air. And I don't really want to know how close we are here, But I think a good rule of thumb is once you start going behind the valve seat, meaning like, you know, under it, and that starts cutting, then you're I think it'll be fine, and I'm not really going to take that any further. And then knowing that I haven't hit water and pretty confident I'm basically at the limits of what I feel comfortable with, maybe it could go further. But now what I would do is mic this out the best I could with the inside calipers and the T-gauge, and then we would clone this over to this one. So again, stock, ported, stock, ported, stock, ported. And I haven't touched the bowls yet, but I don't know. I thought I would just make another quick video while I'm kind of in between. I think it's helpful, you know, to show like those two steps, like what it'll look like when you first cut versus. But again, going from the port is definitely tricky, but you can do a little bit from here. It's just that egg is only going to be able to touch so far in, and depending on what kind of rotary tool you have. So, but for smoothing it out at the actual short side, like no problem doing it with this, or even I can basically reach that even with 1/8 of an inch without touching the valve seat. So but yeah, you can definitely, I know it's hard to show on camera, but here's like a nice, I'm trying to be able to get both in camera, but looking top down, looking at the intake, like you can definitely see how much of a curtain has come out. And the shape, like I'm kind of satisfied with that, considering how finicky that burr can be. And again, by keeping that GT40 spec distance, I know I have just enough room for the water jackets. So anyway,